Somewhere along the way, many of us absorb a quiet message that by the time we reach our 60s, life is supposed to be settled, as if we've already made all the big decisions, chosen our path, closed the door on new possibilities. But here's the truth. That idea is complete nonsense. Welcome. Come on in, get comfy, and let's sit for a while. Today we're talking about something I feel very strongly about. The idea that it's never too late to reinvent yourself. Not in a dramatic sell everything and move to a tropical island sort of way, although if you want to do that, I fully support it. But in the quiet, joyful sense of trying new things, discovering new interests, and letting yourself evolve. Because life doesn't stop growing just because we reach a certain birthday. For some reason, society has this odd idea that personal reinvention belongs to younger people. People in their 20s and 30s are encouraged to change career, start businesses, move to new places, learn new skills. But once you reach your 60s, the message subtly changes. People start saying things like, enjoy the quiet life. Take it easy now. You've done your bit. And while rest is certainly lovely, it doesn't mean curiosity disappears, or ambition, or creativity, or the desire to try something new. In fact, starting something new in your 60s has one enormous advantage. You know yourself. When you were younger, you were often still figuring out who you were, what you enjoyed, what mattered to you. But by this stage of life, you've learned a lot. You know what drains your energy, you know what excites you, you know which things bring you peace. That self-knowledge makes reinvention far easier than it was decades ago, because you're not guessing anymore, you're choosing. Another unexpected benefit of this stage of life is freedom. For many people, there is less pressure, less urgency, less need to prove anything, which means you can experiment. You can try things simply because they interest you. Take a class, start writing, learn an instrument, join a local theatre group, start a small project, learn photography, take up painting, grow vegetables, volunteer somewhere completely different. Not because you have to succeed, but because you're curious. One of the funniest parts of trying new things later in life is remembering what it feels like to be a beginner again. When we're younger, being inexperienced can feel uncomfortable. We worry about looking silly. But by the time you reach your 60s, something interesting has happened. You care a lot less about looking foolish. And that makes learning much more fun. You can laugh at your mistakes, celebrate small improvements, and enjoy the process without taking it too seriously. When people hear the word reinvention, they often imagine huge life changes. But reinvention can be wonderfully small. It might be trying a hobby you never had time for, taking a course just for interest, becoming the person who hosts gatherings, starting a small blog, learning about something you've always been curious about. Little shifts can open entirely new doors. Perhaps the most delightful part of reinventing yourself later in life is this. You surprise yourself. You discover abilities you didn't realise you had, interest you never explored, confidence you didn't know was there. Life becomes exciting again in a quiet, playful way. And that sense of discovery keeps the spirit young. One of the most wonderful things about reinventing yourself in your 60s is this. You no longer have to be impressive. You can simply be curious. When you're younger, we often feel pressure to succeed at whatever we try, to be good at it, to show progress, to prove something. But by the time we reach our 60s, something liberating happens. We realise it doesn't matter nearly as much, which means we can finally enjoy learning for its own sake. Trying something new later in life means returning to a familiar feeling from childhood, being a beginner. At first it can feel a little awkward. You might feel clumsy, uncertain. You might even think, why did I think this would be easy? But here's the lovely part. When you allow yourself to be a beginner, you also allow yourself to be playful. You laugh when things go wrong. You celebrate small improvements. And you remember that learning isn't about perfection. It's about discovery. Reinventing yourself often comes with a few humorous moments along the way. The first time you try something new rarely goes exactly to plan. You might join a yoga class and realise your body has opinions about certain positions. You might start painting and discover that what you intended as a peaceful landscape looks more like a weather emergency. You might attempt gardening and learn that plants, apparently, require more attention than you thought. But those moments become stories, and stories become laughter. And laughter is one of the best signs that you're alive and still learning. Another gift of this stage of life is perspective. When you've lived through decades of experiences, failure stops looking so frightening. You realise that mistakes are simply part of the process. You've made them before. You survived them. And often you learn something valuable along the way. So if something doesn't work out perfectly, you shrug, smile and try again. Or you move on to something else entirely. That freedom makes reinvention feel exciting instead of stressful. Curiosity is one of the most powerful forces in life. It keeps the mind active, the imagination engaged, the spirit interested in the world. When you start exploring new things, even small ones, life begins to feel fresh again. You might find yourself asking questions, reading about new topics, watching documentaries, learning skills you never imagined you'd try, and suddenly the world feels a little bigger again. Sometimes reinvention begins with something very small. You read a book that sparks an idea. You meet someone who introduces you to a new hobby. You see a class advertised at the local community centre. You stumble across something online that makes you curious. Life is full of invitations to explore. The trick is simply saying yes once in a while. The word reinvention can sound very serious, but it doesn't have to be. It can be playful. You might simply decide to try things you've never tried before. Cooking something new, learning about history, trying photography, taking dance lessons, joining a choir, exploring local places you've never visited. Not every new interest becomes a lifelong passion, but each one adds colour to life. There's something very powerful about realising that life doesn't stop evolving just because we reach a certain age. For many people, their 60s bring a surprising discovery. Life isn't winding down. In many ways, it's opening up. For decades, life may have been structured around responsibilities, careers, raising families, looking after others, meeting deadlines, keeping everything moving. Those years were important and meaningful, but they were also demanding. When you reach your 60s, something changes. A new chapter begins, one where the question shifts from "what must I do?" to something far more interesting. What would I like to explore next? There's a strange idea that personal growth belongs to youth. But that simply isn't true. Growth can happen at any age. In fact, many people grow more in their later years because they finally have the space to reflect and experiment. You can still learn, still discover new interests, still surprise yourself, still change direction. The calendar might say 60 something, but the human spirit doesn't run on a schedule. One of the unexpected benefits of getting older is confidence. Not loud confidence, not the kind that needs attention, but a quiet certainty about who you are. You've lived enough life to know that you don't need to follow someone else's script. You can choose your own pace, your own interests, your own version of happiness. And that confidence makes reinvention feel natural rather than risky. Sometimes the most exciting part of reinventing yourself is discovering opportunities you never imagined. You might meet people who introduce you to new ideas. You might try something casually and realise you love it. You might develop talents that were hidden for decades simply because life was too busy before. Those unexpected discoveries remind us that life is still full of surprises, and that curiosity keeps the world feeling alive. Perhaps the most important step in reinventing yourself is giving yourself permission. Permission to try, permission to explore, permission to change your mind, permission to be a beginner again. You don't have to justify curiosity. You don't have to prove anything. This chapter of life can be about enjoyment as much as achievement. It's easy to think of retirement or later life as the final act, but the truth is life continues unfolding. New friendships can appear, new interests can grow, new adventures can begin. And sometimes the most meaningful chapters of our story arrive when we finally have the time to live them fully. If you've ever wondered whether it's too late to try something new, let me reassure you, it isn't. Life doesn't come with a closing date on curiosity. You are still capable of learning, still capable of growing, still capable of surprising yourself. Your 60s can be a time of rediscovery, a time of creativity, a time of exploration. So if something sparks your interest, follow it. You never know where that small step might lead. May curiosity continue to guide you. May new possibilities keep appearing. And may this season of life remind you that it's never too late to begin something new. Thank you for sharing your time with me. Take gentle care of yourselves, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.